Good afternoon, people of the South. My name is Umpa Muswahle, the host of the Human Enemy podcast. I am here with my boy Ndamulelo.
Yes, sir.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. So yeah, like I said on the introduction that I did a few days ago, that today we are going to be doing the first episode of the podcast, and the topic of today is just gonna be childhood programming, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Childhood programming. So, part of the reason why we're doing this thing today is because we are trying to bring to awareness to people out there that
They were just trying to get them more conscious of the process of socialization.
the process of socialization. So, so I was reading this other book a few days ago, and then it kind of reminded me of the psychology that we had in first year when they were talking about children coming into the world being clean slate. So a clean slate simply means that a child comes into this world empty, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so they come into the world empty, right? So obviously there's been a lot of debate between psychologists and neuroscience. And, a few years ago, it was basically proven that children do not come into this world empty. They actually come into this world with certain programs that help them survive.
Sure.
Like sucking, for example. Because as you know, children are not taught to suck so that they can get food. They just have the nipple inside their mouth, and then they start sucking, and then the liquid goes in, and they are cool. And another thing is the whole thing of almost when children come, when they are new borns, they can still move their hands around, they can still kick and all that stuff. So that's just not something that you're being taught or that you're taught. It's just something that happens.
It's natural to humans.
It's a reflex in a way,
Exactly.
It's just a baby's way of saying, let me explore the world and see what goes down. So yeah, and then that's basically how the whole fight between all these people came to an end, that because it was proven that children do not come into this world empty. They do come with certain programs that guide their survival in a way. Yeah. So
It's all about survival.
it's all about survival, my God. So the thing that we wanted to focus more on, specifically on, was the whole thing about social programming, right? So the idea here is that let me just give you an example. When it comes to the beliefs that you hold and the values that you hold, right? I'm pretty much sure we can agree on something, that none of us chose those values and beliefs.
Yep.
There were things that were passed on to us, and for some reason, obviously, we walk, through the world acting as though they are our own,
That's true.
but they were just passed on to us by our parents.
What's funny? A good example of beliefs and values are basically the traditions and cultures passed down from person to person.
Yep.
They're basically the best practices of survival of a particular group of human beings, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we first have to understand these things and understand our process of socialization. Ultimately, for the reason of self-development and self-improvement. Basically, it's the first step of being conscious.
Yeah, definitely.
Learning who you are as a social being and maximizing that potential and becoming basically the best social being that you can be.
And I love the fact that you mentioned social being, because one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that we basically depend on each other for a lot of things, especially when it comes to behaving, in our communities and stuff. Because even when you look at it, you'll come to realize that if you go back home, because so if you go back home, what usually happens is that you'd come to realize that a lot of people basically behave the same.
That's true.
Not
That's
like
true.
the same, but their behaviors are on the same spectrum.
Uh-huh.
Even the way they think is on the same spectrum.
That's
right?
true. That's true.
So, part of the reason why I'm mentioning this thing is because I've realized that people tend to think of themselves as individuals
Uh-huh.
to the exclusion of everything.
That's true. That's true.
And it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. There are a lot of things that literally
That's true.
push you to being the
Uh-huh.
person that you are, like environmental influences and stuff.
You know what's funny? I was watching a spirituality type of video yesterday by a lady called Teal Swan, and she basically talked about spirit animals, right, and totems. And basically, it's basically some cultures have a way of defining themselves and understanding themselves more by looking at the attributes of an animal.
Wow.
Right, so it comes down to also other animals believing in shape-shifting, right? Basically, you identify with the animal so much that at some point you shape-shift into that animal, which is part of the myth and fairy tales of the culture, which kind of is passed down on, for example, the movie Twilight when guys transform into wolves, right?
Yeah.
So basically, she mentioned something about the humanity as a whole, and the three general animals that humanity would shapeshift into or would be classified as identifying to, right? And she said the three general animals for human beings are the snake, the eagle, and the wolf, right? And basically, what this means is that the wolf basically represents the animal in terms of being a social, the human being in terms of being a social animal, because wolves are pack animals.
Yeah.
And basically, the lone wolf doesn't survive the winter, right? So in order to survive, we have to form packs,
Yeah.
right? And then the eagle is basically the ambitious side and the independent side of the animal. Basically, they stay high up in mountains, with their own children and do their own thing and hunt on their own, fly up in the top, basically. And that just reflects a lot of, it came to me when you talked about the individualization of people and how they think they are not part of the whole. So that just kind of brought what the people meant when they said there's different animals within a person that they could identify with. And lastly, the last animal was the snake she talked about, right? And the snake is basically the classic raw representation of nature and the instinct it gives you to survive. So basically the snake is notorious among all animals because it's so raw and in tune with, its nature that it's respected. Basically all animals respect snakes, right? If a snake passes in the jungle, every animal kind of tenses, there's a snake, from lions to elephants.
Sure.
And they don't fuck with it, right? They don't come and try and mess with it unless they feed on snakes, right? But basically the snake gets that respect, and so it shows the rawness of human nature. And even though like we're social animals and we depend on one another, but human nature, right? When stuff hits the fan and survival is,
it's number one.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
Then that snake comes out, and we do what is necessary to survive, which is what is basically has Robert Greene's book Human Nature popping, because we're trying to understand
how we function on a natural level.
Basically.
Exactly.
It's the reason behind all the musical songs in more traditional type of places where they talked about, a human being. Do you know a human being? You could never know a human being.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh no, even Jesus could not understand a human being. So comes with betrayal and we're all loyal to self-interest, and that's what governs us.
Yeah.
Even though we're pack animals, that's literally for survival. And basically self-interest is synonymous with what's best for our survival.
Yeah.
So that just came into my mind when I heard the word, we can't exist as individuals, but we're social creatures.
We're social creatures. And this kind of takes me back to what I mentioned before about how we need to basically, like the thing that you just mentioned about wolves, moving in a pack, right? You can think about it on a more human level. When we move around as a pack, there are certain principles that we have to live by.
Exactly.
And those principles, like you said, they help us survive. And if we teach them to our kids, they're basically gonna take them and then use them as their own, and
That's true.
go through life trying to survive. And this kind of takes me back again to to the fact that to a certain degree we need to realize that so basically we need to look at our community at large, and then look at the people who live close to us, and then look inside the family structures, and then try to see how what principles or what values and beliefs do you hold that come from your household, and then you need to identify the ones that exist in your community. Because if you can do that, right, you'll come to realize that, we all have something in common with one another if we come from a certain community.
That's true.
That in itself says a lot. Because part of the reason why we have certain attributes to one another, and we have certain attributes that differ from one another, is the fact that we don't all walk the same path. Each one of us has their own path, which is basically the thing that kind of makes you realize that there's just no way people who are twins can ever think the same. Because despite the fact that their DNA is like the same all throughout, they don't walk the same path.
That's true.
If I am out there in the shops buying bread, you are basically sitting there watching regular show.
That's true.
So what goes into your mind is not the same thing that goes into my mind. And by the time I come back home as your twin, I've already missed the things that you've seen. And when I come back with a new, different kind of information. Wellington. So, obviously, in addition to what I just said, because I wanted to talk about the day you and I were walking on Main Road, and we were having an argument. And surprisingly enough, guys, this guy is one of those people who you should stay away from, because he's always arguing. This nigga would literally start an argument with you and then convince you that arguing is good. And I'm just like, dude, what the fuck? What do you mean that arguing is good? So this dude and I, we were walking on Main Road. This was back in first year. And I remember we were arguing about girls, basically. So I had my own way of, approaching girls and all that stuff. And he had his own way of, dealing with girls and stuff like that. But the problem is that my way wasn't working for me. So my way wasn't working for me. So we were busy arguing there, and then I ended up telling the guy that he needs to just let me do what works for me. And it wasn't working for me, but I literally told you. I remember those words that I told you that, dude, you need to just let me do my thing. Just let me do things the way I've always done them. And this is when you ended up saying to me that, dude, you need to realize that you and I are products of what our parents have created. And that thing has stayed with me ever since then. Because when I was reading the Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, right? There's something that I realized about the book, was that in order for you to have an impact on the person that you are pursuing, like if you want to get this other girl, you need to pay attention to her past. If you can dig deep into her past and identify, like things like music, you look at the music that this person that you are chasing listens to, you'll come to realize that there's a good memory that is accompanied by that. And then you look at the kind of food they like, you'll come to realize that there's a good memory attached to those food. Like with me, custard is my thing, right? And part of the reason why I love custard so much was because
probably
for the most
gatherings.
part,
it's probably family gatherings.
Exactly, but not those huge family gatherings. It was just because it was usually me and my mom. So I knew that when there was custard, everyone was happy. For some reason, I just knew that. You know, when
Yeah.
there's custard, everybody's happy. You see 7 colors there, and you know everything
Exactly.
is fine. Which kind of explains why I have this incessant need to always cook food and invite people over.
Exactly.
It's just the whole idea of, it's basically just me regressing, wanting to relive those childhood, you know, memories. So the thing that we need to realize is that even with us, we have certain things that we like, and they all have good memories attached to them. So if you are pursuing someone, you need to you need to make sure that you focus on their past, because that's where you're gonna get the fruit,
Yeah.
the fruity stuff.
Not to mention, like, basically the essence of focusing on their past and basically what he's been talking about is basically it's basically the fundamental basis of David X's seduction system, because it's all associations, and basically
Yeah,
associations give you the keys to someone's mind, because that's how the brain works, right?
Yeah.
Basically, the brain associates this feeling
And a
to
certain action.
a certain experience,
Yeah.
and then basically it's like you get them to talk about pleasurable experiences, and they associate these experiences with talking to you, and talking to you is basically you associate with that experience. And it's also part of how the seduction process is supposed to go, because you use the mind to activate the heart, and then you use that to conquer the body, basically.
Exactly.
And the body is the last part, because for the body to be fully aroused and have that peak experience of pleasure, both the mind and emotions have to be in it.
Yeah.
Or you're going to have to do a lot of work,
Definitely.
which might not actually work unless, of course, basically it's part of... I can't remember who said this, but I was watching a video by... it's a woman called Maria something. But basically she talked about...
It's not Maya Angelou, right?
No.
Okay.
She talked about... Yeah. She has a YouTube channel around sex, basically. And she talked about being the best lover, right? And basically, it's a thing that I've been doing and working on it, you know, on my system of seduction. Basically, it was there, and I always do it. But basically, the best lover is... I remember saying this to you sometime, probably a few years ago.
Maybe
But
you
the,
did.
But the best lover is basically the person that personalizes his kind of loving to the individual,
Yeah.
the target,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's basically,
Exactly.
it's in the art of seduction.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like, you remember when I talked to you about sexual healing and how, my relationships with women are the fundamental thing for me is my relationships with anyone as well as women is basically healing the pattern of attachment that they have and creating a secure pattern of attachment with them, right? So basically, personalizing that, being that lover that personalizes your loving and relationship to them gives them the right kind of sex they want, and not just sex. So basically, even if you do practice techniques with a woman, but you don't have her mind and you don't have the experiences and the way she wants to be touched, right?
Exactly.
You're basically doing techniques that are generally going to work on typical women,
Yeah.
but then it leaves like a loophole, and that like literally gives room for a gap and for them to want something, even though they have
Yeah.
something with you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it goes back to, you remember when I talked to Vuyo and I asked her the 3 questions, right? Well, talk to this other girl. And I asked her...
I was about to tell you not to mention names.
Yeah.
But it's cool.
Talk to this other girl. And I asked her the 3 questions, and I said they had to do with psychology with them. And I said the 3rd question had to do with your sexual style, right? And basically, I said, that lets me know how to make love to you, right? Basically, and that's basically what you do as a lover. You find out the patterns they've had in their life and how they've had relationships, right? And you basically give them the right patterns, because basically healing is experiencing the opposite, right? Experiencing the opposite is basically, it's only healing if the pattern they now have was not a good thing. Right? So if they experience the opposite of that and experience the healthy pattern instead of the bad pattern, then that's called healing because it's experiencing the opposite. And basically, when you experience a bad thing, right, you kind of create the belief of this is what I have, and you get scared of the good thing because the bad thing is basically the only thing you have, and you think that if you try and get the good, you'll lose the bad and you'll have nothing. So that's basically what keeps people stuck.
Shit.
So yeah, that's basically. Oh yeah, and one thing I also wanted to add in goes back to me quoting Dr. Bruce Lipton, right? And basically, you talked about how in childhood your mind is in an open and a state of hypnosis, right? And basically, it just takes in information to learn socialization for survival, right? And well, it's part of the reason why we do this, right? Now he said that. Well, he talked about the vibration of the child's mind and how it's theta and it's synonymous with imagination and basically the absorption of information, which has to do with neuroplasticity as well, right? But basically, as much as we think that we have lost that in childhood,
we haven't.
We have not, right?
Yeah.
And basically, one thing that self-development helps us do is what we were supposed to be talking about in the next episode of this, right? But it's basically becoming an adult, right?
Yeah.
And taking ownership of the programming, right? So it starts with awareness, right? Basically, that's the first step to personal development, which is why we're bringing forth the childhood programming, right? So basically, it's the awareness, right, of these programs, right? Because if that never happens, you don't realize that. As a social human being, it's natural that you absorb the living conditions and the beliefs and basically the values of the circumstance, right? In order to survive, which comes naturally to you. If you don't become aware of this process, then you can't control who you are. This way, as an adult, right, you can't really become an adult if you don't take that responsibility and that ownership. So you'll stay just you'll stay absorbing and adapting, just a human being, but you can never really be the captain of your ship, as most of us want to believe. For example, if an adult is not conscious and not self-aware, they'll just live in one state or one particular place, right? And when you take them to the next particular place, right, automatically through adaptation and that absorption and socialization, their beliefs and their values change, right? But if they do not become aware of this, then they don't know the growth that is happening to them and the shift, right? So one thing that helps people become aware and as we grow, we become adults is a shift in context, a shift in values, which is why most adults value traveling and promote it because it makes you realize and reflect on who you are and yourself and how you became to be. And then it just gives you a different perspective and a different culture to look at. And that's when you become an adult and you go, okay, this is the right programming for me. I'm going to skim over and choose this and this and that. And basically, you learn to appreciate different people. That's when you become an adult and you value the beliefs of different people without bashing them, right? So, yeah, I think that's also where conflict arises. When you're so identified with who you are, I think it also has to do with not so positive way of attaching to things, right? So you value, it's basically like an insecure ego, as Alan Roger Curry, an author of the Mode 1 approach, puts it, right? It's an insecure ego. So basically, it's a pattern of attachment that you've had that it's not secure, right? So basically, when you have something, you're too scared to explore another thing because you think you'll lose what you have and who you are. And it also it's synonymous with being a child because basically, if you're not conscious and you're not aware and you're not fully in control and doing your own programming, then you don't know. You know that naturally when you get into that context, right? It's why we're scared of people being different than us. For example, someone being gay, right? It's because you know that if I let go of who I am, right? And you don't have a good grip on it, right? You don't have the fundamentals, you don't know what makes you you. So you're scared. If I just go into that context, because it results in conditioning and being and growing up and all that, I'll lose it naturally.
Yeah.
Because I don't control the process. You know, I don't have that grip on what naturally comes in to my world. I don't have filters, basically.
So you obviously, okay. So you mentioned something about you picking up certain things to, you know, to go, like you're taking certain different beliefs and then you are putting them into this thing that we can basically call a core principles that literally guides your life. We are told is that okay. So the thing that I wanted to add into the whole thing is that in order for you to know what you want out of this life, for some reason you have to know where you're coming from. Exactly. And you have to understand yourself. Because if you can see how all the things that have led, all the circumstances have contributed to making this person that you are, you can now pick and choose. That, okay, I'm going to choose that principle, I'm going to choose that value, I'm going to choose that belief. If you can put those things together and say, okay, this is how I'm gonna go through life, right? It's going to make it easy for you, even when you're looking for a partner.
That's true.
Because you'll always look for someone who at least possesses one or two of the principles that you have.
That's true.
And all the things, the principles that they don't have, you know, I mean, like, you find a way to work around them.
Yeah.
Right? Which is basically the thing that I once said when I was talking to
some
of my friends, that people have this thing of saying, I need a boyfriend or a girlfriend like this. Right? So what I get from that is that you only want a person with certain characteristics, right? If this person changes those characteristics, they are no longer available to you.
That's true.
Right? So to avoid that whole thing of choosing people in terms of their, you know, like choosing people like that is kind of disadvantageous, because you get to lose out on choosing people to be a part of your life, to help you build something. For example, if you know that you want a family, right? Like your ultimate goal is to have a family. For example, your ultimate goal is to have a family, right? You will be able to sit down and be like, okay, what kind of family do I want? And then you start writing it down. And then after you have everything down, you know, you pick and choose again the things that you don't want and the things that you want. And then you go into the world. When you meet a guy or when you meet a chick, right, you try to check if they look at family more or less the same way that you do.
Exactly.
Right? So this way, obviously you're going to struggle when it comes to finding a partner, because there are so many people that you're just going to, you know, scratch off the list.
That's
Literally
true.
scratch off the list.
That's true.
You know, there are so many people, but eventually it's going to work out. That's basically what happens with everything in life. You have to take out all the distractions so that you can get to the final thing. So if you look for someone who wants a family, you know that you're looking for someone who can help you build a family. So every single guy or every single chick that you meet on the streets, if you come across someone and then they tell you about how they would choose their career over family, you know that I'm dealing with the wrong person. So you just let them be. You know, if you want to have sex with them, because I've seen that this thing is like becoming the norm now, where people just have sex randomly with just about anyone. If you feel like you are too horny and all that stuff, and you just want to, you know, have sex with this person, go ahead. You can have sex with them and then move on with your life. I'm basically encouraging nonsense, but it's fine. So you.
No, I think it's pretty. It's good in terms of people do that naturally, but to do it consciously,
where you get to learn certain things. And this kind of brings us to the point that you raised the other day, that to a certain degree, well, it's okay. It's perfectly fine for you starting from the age of 16. For example, starting from the age of 16, where you start dating, date, and then you break up with that guy, you date, you break up with that guy, you break up. So if you are doing those things
consciously,
if you're doing them consciously rather than just randomly, it gives you a chance to learn in the process that oh shit. So eventually these things, when you finally meet your person, right, when you finally meet your person, you know how to work around solving conflicts in the context of a relationship.
That's true.
Because I know a lot of people usually say that you know, no, this is how you have to do this thing when you're in a relationship, but I mean, like, it's not that easy. You know, you have to learn this stuff. You can read them off a book, but it's not going to help. You need to put them into practice. So ultimately, what you need to realize is that, which is the point that I wanted to make with everything that I said, is that look into your past. Look at everything that has influenced who you've become, and from there choose the things that you feel like you don't want to lose, and then go through life with them. For example, the thing that I mentioned about me, like like enjoying inviting people over for lunch and all that stuff. That's another thing that literally kind of makes me realize why, to a certain degree, I would love to have a family. Because for me, there's always been that thing with I need to know what it's like to sit on a table with people and have supper.
Sure.
Right? That has always been my thing. I don't know when did it start. Oh yeah, it started when I started realizing that at my cousin's place, they all sit on a table and they eat. And I used to visit those people and sit with them.
Sure.
And it used to be like the best fucking experience, to a point, Aguti. When I go back home, I know, it's just me and my mom. My uncle lived in his own shack at the back of the house there. It was cool.
Sure.
So I knew when I come back home, it's just me and my mom. But when I go, we are basically next door still, even though we share the same surname.
Sure.
So even though when I go out next door, I know that, oh shit, there's this bunch of people who literally sit on a Sunday evening having supper. And that used to be cool. Like for me, I used to enjoy that so much. So I was like, how about I build something of this nature for myself?
That's true.
So that's basically where the whole idea of family comes in, because to a certain degree, I started looking at all the things that I loved about my childhood, and I was like, how about I take this thing into because they are not disadvantageous to me. It's the same thing as the principles that guide certain cultures. The ones that work, are passed on to the next generations. The ones that do not work, they are left behind. That's basically how we evolve as people.
That's true.
We're told. So your past is like a gold mine, and the past of the person that you're dating is like a gold mine. If you can use whatever that you use to dig all that gold and platinum and all that stuff, you'll be able to even surprise your boyfriend or your girlfriend with the things that they don't even know where you get the idea. Sometimes you just have to sit down and listen to someone and just listen.
That's true.
Just listen to them talk about their childhood and all that stuff, and look at all the great advantages. Okay, not the great advantages, but all the positive childhood experiences that they bring into the conversation, and see how you can replicate that. Young told that's a very powerful tool to use. And another thing, and which is like the easiest way of realizing this thing. All of us have been to parties, right? And we've been to the best parties. And one thing that usually happens with you going to the best party is that the next day you feel like you should go there again.
That's true.
Because you're looking for that rush. That rush of energy. You're looking for that again. Young told. So that's basically the thing with everything that we want to repeat in our lives, is because it makes us feel good. So anything that makes us feel good, there's a chance that we're gonna want to repeat it. So if something was a positive experience for you in your childhood, you just replicate that. And I don't know about the person that you're dating. If they're listening to this podcast, then kudos to them, because at least they will know how they are supposed to approach you.
Yes,
because like this guy said, every single one of us has a specific way in which we want to be touched. And the way he told me the first time he told me this was that you need to touch a woman in a way that she enjoys. And I was like, damn. And like one thing that I've realized again is that a lot of chicks that I usually have conversations with, okay, a lot of dudes seem to struggle when it comes to listening to their girlfriends when they are being told, Guti, can you please do it like this? These guys end up being a little bit defensive, in the sense that they start thinking, Guti, are you saying that I'm not doing it? I don't know my stuff. We are told.
Sure.
So that's just another thing that we need to realize, Guti.
Yeah, we all feel insecure when it comes to that.
Exactly. Especially when someone tries to shows you a better way of doing something that you feel like you're good at. Because I mean, like, there's literally no guy who can sit here and be like, my sex game is weak. There's just no way. Every single one of us is just like, I know myself.
That's true.
So to a certain degree, if you are a guy and you're listening to this thing, look, my guy, You need to make sure that you listen to that woman, because the only way
Yeah.
you will ever know how to touch her the way she wants to be touched, if you listen to the things that she tells you. If she says you wanna be kissed on the butt cheeks, just do that.
No, not really. No, not that. I think
No, I'm
I
kidding.
think the best way of listening to her is basically by copying what she does to you. Because basically, it's only
Nah,
natural.
it's not gonna be the same, bruh.
What do you mean?
I mean, like, you can't copy what she does to you.
Well, the thing is, like, how she touches you is basically
what
how
about how
she
she
wants.
touches herself?
Exactly. How she touches you is how
fix
she
it
wants
then.
to be touched.
Say the way she wants to, not the way she touches you.
Well, that's
okay,
it's two of the
exactly.
it's two things.
Because you can't do something you've never seen before.
Exactly.
So if you touch yourself in a certain way, you are going to.
Exactly.
You are a fucking genius.
It's basically how she touches you and how she touches
It
herself.
makes sense
That's
now.
that's
Okay.
that's what you look at.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And there are two more things I wanted to
But
talk about.
obviously, if she slaps you on the butt, I mean, like, come on, bro, you have to stop it. That's not how we do things here.
Well, you basically stop her by slapping her on the butt, basically.
Okay.
But basically, I wanted to say that it might not be the best idea to go around dating a lot of people in terms of if you're going to be having sex with them and all that. And just some people are crazy, right?
Yeah.
So basically,
And it doesn't give you the chance to know the one that you. So I mean, like,
Exactly.
a human being is so fucking complex to a
Uh-huh.
point. Yaguti, if you go around dating every single one that you see on the streets,
Uh-huh.
you are basically losing out on knowing just one person and
Exactly.
utilizing all the information that you learn about them from their childhood to make the best impact in their life.
Mhm.
Young child, because with this whole thing of personal development, and part of the reason why we are doing this podcast is to help us and
Uh-huh.
you guys to see that to a certain, you can become the best version of yourself, and
Uh-huh.
you being the best version of yourself, you can basically be the best version of a lover to somebody else.
Exactly.
And all the other people whom you don't need to be lovers to,
That's
your
true.
friends and family. Yeah.
yeah, it's funny how we started the podcast talking about childhood.
And then
now,
we are here now.
We naturally
I know,
gravitated
I know.
towards relationship.
So, okay, I just realized that the laptop is going to die anytime
Okay.
soon. So we're going to have to
Cut
stop
it short.
here, and
Uh-huh.
then we are going to continue again next week.
All right.
And
So catch the next episode of The Human in Me.
The Human in Me, all the way. This is like the first episode, and then there's a second episode, which is going to come after 2 weeks.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to come after 2 weeks. And I hope you guys heard everything that we said. Basically, the thing here is that we come into this world with certain programs. Those programs help us navigate the world around us.
Uh-huh.
With the information that we learn from our environment, we tend to internalize certain things that we, judge the world in terms of, like, obviously the values and beliefs. You look at the world and you're like, does this world that I'm looking at
Uh-huh.
in line with my beliefs or not?
Uh-huh.
That's just how we go through life, trying to see if can I cross this bridge or not. Can I do this or not? You are guided by your principles, and your principles and values and beliefs, they make up who you are today.
Mhm.
And if you can realize how all those things have come to make you who you are, you can then cherry pick. Okay, I want this, I don't want this, I want that, I want this. And then from the things that you want, provided obviously they work for you and they can work for other people, because you don't want to encourage this whole thing of you working on yourself just to be selfish. You have
Mhm.
to realize that we are social beings.
Mhm.
We survive off each other. We literally feed off each other, which is why we conform. Part of conformity is us surviving in this environment.
That's true.
We are told.
I'm trying to
So-
make the best practices as human beings.
Exactly. So just
That's why
make sure
everything
that-
trends, and it's basically why
Mhm.
people feel like they're superior to people who are not hip to what is most popular.
Yeah.
It's not just, and well, it has to do with the insecurity as well as it has to do with survival in terms of I'm more aware of my environment.
Let's stick to the survival part, because
Yeah.
if you go to the insecurity part, we're never gonna finish.
No, we'll never. Let's leave the
Unfortunately,
insecurity
we'll never
part.
finish.
Do with survival. Basically,
Yeah.
being aware of what's going on in your surroundings is why, as an adult, you
Yeah.
grow up and you
Yeah.
naturally gravitate towards listening to the news and radio stations, and watching the news is basically you want to know its safety and security.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
as you're young, it's more popularity and and yeah, it's a lot more social.
dude, there's so much to say, and there's little time,
Yeah.
and the laptop battery is dying. So
Yeah.
we're gonna have to cut this thing here.
All right.
And I hope you guys heard everything that we said.
Mm-hmm.
I know my friend here was using some strong and heavy language there, but it's fine. I'm pretty much sure you'll be able to understand.
Yep.
And thank you very much for tuning in. We will see you again in 2 weeks' time.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Next time we'll
Switch off the microphone.